Men and women of the Congo, victorious independence fighters, I salute you in the name of the Congolese government. I ask all of you, my friends, who tirelessly fought in our ranks, to mark this June 30th, 1960, as an illustrious date that will be ever engraved in your hearts. A date whose meaning you will proudly explain to your children, so that they in turn might relate to their grandchildren and great-grandchildren the glorious history of our struggle for freedom. Although this independence of the Congo is being proclaimed today by agreement with Belgium, an amicable country, with which we are on equal terms, no Congolese will ever forget that independence was won in struggle. A persevering and inspired struggle carried on from day to day. A struggle in which we were undaunted by privation or suffering and stinted neither strength nor blood.
Hello and welcome to Self-Upgrade. So today we have a guest. Our guest is Mr. Koko Matata, who is here actually. This is his second time coming to the podcast. The first time he came and we talked about, he did his analysis around Ibrahim Traoré, the Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger situation, which is very, insightful and very interesting. So I will put a link here for you guys to go and have a look. But today, he's here for a very different reason. He's here today to talk about a book, a very important book for any Pan-Africanist out there. If you want to understand what is happening today in Africa, you need to read this book. The book that we're going to talk about today is titled White Malice, the CIA and the Covert Recolonisation of Africa by Susan Williams. So our brother Koko Matata is going to take us through this book. And then, obviously, we're not going to read the entire book. We're not even going to read it, but he's just going to analyze the book, with us. And then we can draw parallels together with what is happening today in Africa. Because as you're going to see, there are lots of things happening behind the curtain. With the media, we are just told, the narrative that they want us to know, basically the narrative, the truth, that they want us to remember. But in reality, there are other factors that are playing behind the curtain. So today, our brother Koko Matata is going to help us to understand what is really happening and how the West operate when it comes to their politics in Africa. So without further ado, let's welcome our brother Koko Matata to Self-Upgrade. Hello, brother. How are you today?
Hello, Queen. I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for coming back. And like I was saying in the introduction, I remember our discussion regarding the Sahel states. It was really, really interesting and insightful. So I'm sure that today, you're going to help us basically with this book. You're going to help us to understand what is really happening in Africa.
Thank you. That's a hard ask, but I'll try my best. So importantly, we are talking about a 700 pages book, which it's been a while since I read it, but I still remember most of it. So what I will have to do is I have to, revert to memory, revert to important events which are still relevant today.
Amazing. So before we start, can you just tell us a few, just a little bit about yourself and what you do from a Pan-Africanist perspective?
Thank you. So as my sister has said, my name is Koko Matata. I hail from Southern Africa, so from the Kingdom of Lesotho. I say Kingdom of Lesotho because it's not just that country which you see in the middle of South Africa. Lesotho is much, much bigger. It's a kingdom of many, many people, many Basotho speaking people. And we are also related to the Botswana. We are related to Babedi, which some people call North Sotho in South Africa. We are also related to the Balozi or Bawotse, who are in Zambia and parts of Namibia. So Caprivi, the German, when he cut a strip across to move from Namibia, which was then German controlled, to get access to the Zambezi, thinking the Zambezi will take him to the Indian Ocean, he cut across my people, which are the Balozi people in Zambia. So yeah, that's me. And now I live in the United Kingdom. As a Pan-Africanist, we sort of are in decolonization. We are in the education sphere in which we are teaching people the right Afrocentric education, because we recognize that the education most of us received in school was not it. It was meant to keep us where we are. It's important. We all know that. And most of it came through the religious schools which we were enrolled. Let's not forget, the missionaries came here as part of the colonization effort. So what do you expect at the end? Why do you expect to get an empowering or an education that's enlightening from such kind of institutions? I'm not going to talk down the education we got. We got the education we got from the mission schools, most of us in Africa. But I need people to understand that it was all a system, and that system is working as expected. So if you don't see Africa progressing, don't ask questions and say, okay, but Africans are educated. They are only educated to do what they were told to do or what they were taught to do. So my organization, the New Pan-African Agenda, is intent on changing the narrative, is intent on changing the mindsets, is intent on re-educating the Africans to understand what actually happened and what is the right level of education that the Africans should be looking at. But we work with different other organizations. One of those is Conscientism Study Group, which they learn Dr. Nkrumah's philosophy book for decolonization, and that happens on every Thursday. Our own courses are now on a weekly basis, in which we sort of look at what a colonization did on a biological level, what it has done to the brain. And the bottom line is that we have been infused with fear. And what the fear does is it reroutes your own way of thinking from using the higher brain into using a lower brain. And that lower brain is only using the fight or flight mode. So that is what is happening for most of us. And it's what's happening with most of the leaders we have. Most of the leaders we have, they got that kind of education where all they do is, okay, what can I get for myself? What can I get for my clan? What can I get for my tribe? The people close to me. And it's that part of the mindset, that part of the brain that is just meant for fight or flight. But if we use a higher brain, higher thinking brain, we can look longer term. We can look at Africa as a whole. We can look at a more conscious level. We adopt a more conscious brain level. So that is us, in short, what we are doing. But we are also, at the moment, looking at small projects on the ground in which we are going to combine with this education. It's not just education. We recognize that it's bigger. The problem is always bigger than just the education. Education is just part of that problem. Governance is there, all right? And the religiousness, which I have alluded to already, is a bigger part. Because if you are taught to always try to bring in the God into this space in which you understand what that God does, you're not going to get anywhere. In fact, we are constantly looking out for help, whereas we should be looking inside. We should be looking within us for solutions. And I should see my sister here and see a God. That's God. I should see life, I see God. I should see plants, I see life, I see God. But the religion which we have adopted, most of the foreign religions, are the ones where we tend to think about God in the form of a human form. No. If we were all rhinos or we were all elephants, we will think God was an elephant. God was a rhino. It's that simple. But we need to move away from that and realize that God cannot give us creation, cannot give us life, abundance of life, and just be another man. When who knows whether he's a man or is a woman? Why should he have gender? Why should he have a son? Why doesn't he have a daughter? Why is he in the first place? So lots of things that we do in that organization, but at the same time, we have books such as this one, which are important for our own emancipation. And importantly, the language is there. It's there amongst all of the stuff that we need to be thinking about. Why are we being moved away from our languages? It's something which we haven't thought about since independence. And we have been brought into this clans, a clan of English speaking against a French speaking clan, a Portuguese clan against an Arab speaking clan. We need to be moving away from there as Pan-Africans. We need to realize that we are building walls amongst ourselves. We are building walls that are stopping us from moving ahead, from forging ahead. And the reason why Monrovia, Casablanca, the Pan-Africanism agenda didn't move forward wasn't because of other things. It was mostly because of foreign influence. Those foreign influence came either through languages or through religion or through different education. So this is it. This is me today. I don't know. This is just in brief what we do. But today the book I'm going to talk about is White Malice by Dr. Susan Williams, who, it's an enlightening book, I'll say, because it looks at Congo, but looks at Congo in the wider scope of Pan-Africanism. Because it recognizes what happened in Congo was not just an internal affair, was not just Mobutu against Lumumba or Chombe against Lumumba. It's much bigger than that. It's much bigger than that.
Yes, first of all, because you mentioned quite a few things there that I think may be of interest to, some people watching or listening to the podcast. So it will be great if you can send me some links or, some details regarding how to join, all the courses, because like I said, they are very important.
Thank you very much, Queen. So the book is called White Malice because they're talking about the white supremacy actually malicing us as the people of African descent. In short, it's malicing the Pan-African agenda. So if you think about whiteness, we are always thinking about whiteness because we equate whiteness with supremacy. We equate it with purity. We equate it with a lot of other things. So when we judge lots of things, we are always looking from a white Eurocentric perspective. And in this malicing, is actually using what was happening within the white area and bringing that into an Africa which was at a time decolonizing, and then taking that agenda and turning it into another white supremacy agenda. So that's where the white malicing is coming from. So most of this book is about Lumumba's fight for survival. Because most of you will know, Lumumba was the first prime minister of Congo when they got independence in 1960. But he didn't last long in power. He was overthrown. Before he was overthrown, he was destabilized. Congo was destabilized which led to his being overthrown. And then in the end, one of his protege, Mobutu, was in charge of seeing Lumumba murdered. Lumumba was assassinated in 1961, some days before President Kennedy came into power, because all of this happened under President Dwight Eisenhower of the United States. So, as you know, the United States presidential terms are termly, and every 4 years, there are 4 years. And when it happened in 1961, there was a change in government from the Republicans to the Democrats, and they had to move quickly to eliminate Lumumba so that he doesn't come back under JF Kennedy. So that is the core of the book, but lots and lots of stuff lead up to that happening. And the opening one is when Ghana got its independence in 1957. And when Ghana got its independence, again, let's not forget what I said when I was here last time. Independence, we were never dependent on the colonizers. The colonizers have always been dependent on us. But what they were saying, they would say, we are their colonies. They came here with a civilizing mission. Hence why they find it easier to say independence, because these people were dependent before. Now they are independent because we have taught them about stuff. But that is not the case. This I'm talking about self-government, self-determination. So Ghana got its self-determination in 1957 after years under British rule. And this is the opening set of the opening scene to the book. It shows midnight. They call it midnight at independence, because then that's when most of sub-Saharan African countries, they realize that it's possible. You can actually get your own self-determination. You can rule yourself. These people who currently occupy our countries can one day go, and we can have our own rule, our own self-determination. So that's where it all starts in 1957. And there are lots of guests, eminent guests, including Nixon, who was then a vice premier to Dwight Eisenhower. He was a man waiting to occupy when Eisenhower was going. He was the vice president. But at the same time, we had Reverend Martin Luther King, who then went to Ghana with high hopes. He was seeing an opportunity here for the Africans, the black men throughout in the West, in Africa, getting their own self-determination, having a way in which they could have control over their lives, control over their destiny. In fact, that's what Pan-Africanism is about. Pan-Africanism is about people of African descent everywhere. They share history. They share aspirations. They share dreams of the future. They share lots and lots. They have lots in common, regardless of where they have been. They have been moved away out of Africa into the diaspora. They went through, terrible conditions, terrible living conditions. Slavery is reducing the human to a level below the animal. It's dehumanizing the animal. But despite that, Pan-Africanism was always the spirit that kept them alive. The hope that one day they will return back to Africa. So Ghana getting that independence, they are saying this is happening. This is finally happening. One day we will come back. Or one day we in America or anywhere where we are, we might find some, we might find some redemption. We might come into being as ourselves and be able to self-determine, self-govern. So that was that. But again, it's amazing because this is an international affair. We have people like Nixon, as I said, and there's a line there where Nixon leaves at the airport. He leaves people who are accompanying him there, the officials, and he goes and meets people. The black people, he sees black people in Africa, he's happy to engage with black people in Africa, but what about in America? We don't know. Here is in Africa, he wants to give them a different thing. But at the same time, the journalists are observing, oh, he is already on a campaign trail because he wants to be the next president, of course. What can he do? Funny enough, he says to another black man, hey, my man, my fellow, how are you? How does it feel to be free? And the guy says, I will not know, sir. I'm from Alabama. That is again an interesting phenomenon where you cannot tell. You cannot tell. A black man in America is the same as a black man in Africa. Where do you draw a line? You cannot draw a line. They are all the same, right? So that is during that time, 1957, 1958, Ghana hosted one of the 8th Pan-African Conference. And during that 8th Pan-African Conference, it was where they were coming together to plan on the Pan-African agenda, Pan-African flag, to say, we now have to work to free other countries which are still under colonial rule in Africa. So as you can see, most of the countries in Africa started getting independence from the 60s onward. So Ghana was by all means one of the first. It's not the first in Africa. Of course, there was Egypt first and then Sudan after. I think Sudan was 1956. But the important thing is Ghana presented that beacon of hope. It became that beacon of hope. And in 1958 conference, they invite lots of freedom fighters from across Africa to come to that Pan-African conference, which was different from the other Pan-African conference which were held on foreign soil. This time, it's coming for the first time on an African soil, which again is another massive beacon of hope for the Africans. Because you remember the others were held in Manchester, one was held in London, others were held outside Africa. And this time, Africans are home on African soil. And Lumumba is there as a young man, and Fanon is there again, and Mumi from Cameroon. And they come there, they come from a French-speaking background. Most of the others, they come from an English-speaking background. Of course, they are also the Portuguese speakers. And they meet there together. Lumumba, Fanon and Mumi are around the same age, so they create that bond, that brotherly bond, which it doesn't stop there just at the conference. And it is at that conference where most of the spirit was that we need to protest, we need to mobilize to get our freedom peacefully, by all means, peacefully all the time. That was what most of the Africans there were thinking. Because if you remember, during the civil rights movement in America, most of that was gained through peaceful protest. And let's not forget where this is coming from. This is from Gandhi. Gandhi started that movement when he was living in South Africa in the early 1900s, when he started protesting peacefully for the emancipation of the Indians in South Africa. And then he continued that to India, where he eventually got the independence for India and became the first Prime Minister of India. So most of the Pan-Africans at that time were feeling, yes, this is the right way to go. But then Fanon took to the stand and said, what if these peaceful protests don't yield anything? And what if they shoot us when we protest peacefully? What should we do? And he stood there, he was speaking in French, so most of them did not even know what he was saying, but they were interpreters. But they realized that he had enlivened the French speakers in the room. They came alive when Fanon took to the stand and started making his speech there. And at the time he said, no, we have to fight. We have to fight for our own independence. No one is going to give us this independence, give us this freedom. we have to fight for it. And at that time, they made the resolution that by all means, we need to hold peaceful protests. But where it doesn't work, we have to bear arms. We have to bear arms. And let's not forget, at that time, Fanon was fighting with the Liberation Front in Algeria, fighting for Algerian independence from France, which at the time were using Algeria as another home. They were seeing it as an extension of France, not just a colony this time. It was a settler colony, more or less in the same way as South Africa is, or was, or Israel is as a settler colony. So at the time, the Algerians had to fight for their own independence. It's from people like Fanon that they managed to do that. And that spirit really gave people like Lumumba something to think about. And at the same time, Lumumba was lucky. Dr. Nkrumah was there and took a serious liking to Lumumba. Because I guess at the time he was seeing Lumumba as a nationalist. Lumumba was looking wider than just his tribe. He wasn't tribalist. And that is in contrast with Kasavubu, Joseph Kasavubu, at the time, who was leading a party for the Bakongo people. It was like for the emancipation of the Bakongo people in Congo. But Lumumba came along and managed to unite all the Congolese people under one banner. They were fighting for unity, fighting for freedom of the whole of Congo. And they came back from Ghana with that feeling in mind in 58. And funny enough, 58, they come and Lumumba was in Kinshasa, then Leopoldville, and these cities were, racially segregated a lot. There were places where they wouldn't go as black people, and there were places where only whites would go, white Belgians would go. But at the same time, Lumumba was able to go to Brazzaville and hear, or he managed to listen to De Gaulle when he was promising the French speakers that you will have an opportunity to choose freedom or to stay within the Francophone community, and everyone will be guaranteed that. Funny enough, Sekou Touré, who was campaigning under the flag of, we will rather go for poverty rather than, what did they call it? It was freedom, complete freedom, rather than slavery in richness. Slavery in richness. I'll find the right words for you for what he called that. But that was his slogan. So Sekou Touré said, no, nothing of this sort. This again is another, is a masking of what these guys want. They want to keep us longer within their control. And guess what? It's what happened. It's what happened. It's only now that Burkina Faso and Niger and Mali have actually overthrown the colonial control, because it continued. But what happened is, when Guinea chose to reject the French Francophone community, which the French were promising, they went all out to make it impossible for Guinea to live after that. They destroyed everything. Desks. They say even plumbing, the pipes, they fill them with cement. They say even the cows in the field, they shot them. They banned even some of the cows. Yes. That was the French. That was the French trying to send a message to anyone else that if you vote out of the French community, then you will experience what the Guineans experienced. And this is more or less what they did with the Haitians. Let's not forget. It's the same story, same storyline. They barricaded Haiti and said, until you pay, we're not going to leave this barricade alone. We're going to bomb you to smithereens. Until Haiti took out that loan, which they were only able to pay off some years back. We're talking about trillions of dollars, which the previously formerly enslaved people had to pay their slave owners in order to get their freedom. How sad is that? And with Guinea, it was saying, you are ungrateful. We have to show you a lesson in what happens when you are ungrateful. This is what comes to you when you are ungrateful. We colonized you, we civilized you. And what did Macron say? Some weeks ago, what did Macron say? He said, ingratitude is not a communicable disease. Ingratitude is not a communicable disease. All the Africans who got help from the French are ungrateful. Isn't that what Macron said? It's the same thing. The same thing. That's what we are getting from that, the attack on the Guinean people and the Guinean economy. In fact, they were printing more money for the Guinean economy in order to devaluate or depreciate their currency. And at that time, nobody wanted to borrow, to lend the money to the Guineans. The Guineans were at a low level. They needed the money, they needed anything. And at that time, Dr. Nkrumah signed a check for the Guineans. He helped the Guineans throughout that time. But most of the French-speaking Africans, when they saw what happened to Guinea, they desired to vote to stay within whatever community de Gaulle and the French had planned for them. Right? But Lumumba at that time was learning all of this and reflecting, okay, this is what's happening. We need to think again. So when they went for their own round table in 1960 to negotiate freedom for Congo, they all had seen all of these machinations. They have seen all of these machinations. Again, let me also go back a bit to Ghana. Ghana itself, Nkrumah got into power from prison. He got into power from prison because he was a political prisoner who was campaigning to get freedom now. He was the man of, we want our freedom now, because Dr. Nkrumah had learned a lot, had realized what they were doing. He is a man who is a scholar. He is a scholar president. He has written lots and lots of books, which I will encourage anyone to read. Right? He had seen this and decided, okay, they wanted to hold on longer so they could change lots of things within the Ghanaian landscape before they left. Don't worry, I'll send the list of Dr. Nkrumah's books. When he was toppled, most of his books, they were either banned or actually destroyed to make sure nobody gets access to his books, because he was of a radical mindset, a radical way of things.
You know what, brother? Let me just add this to your analysis, because it's very interesting. And as you're talking about Dr. Nkrumah, to be honest with you, even myself, I didn't know how important he was in I didn't know about his role in basically in pushing towards in pushing the independence movement. And also, even after, Ghana and the other countries got their independence, he was at the center, basically, of organizing not only Ghana, but also Africa, to make sure that, Africa works towards, getting united. So that's a side of Dr. Nkrumah that we don't really get to know, because obviously, we just know that he was, the first prime minister of Ghana. And then we don't really get to understand, how important his role was. So if, for instance, just like myself, you don't realize how important, Dr. Nkrumah was, then you need to read this book. Because when I remember, that was the first thing that got into my head. I was like, wow. I knew that he was, a great man, but I didn't know that he was this great. Because I'm sure that your brother Koko, you're going to talk about it. but he's the one who influenced Lumumba. I'm sure that you'll talk about that, so I'm not going to go ahead with that. But please read this book and get to learn about Dr. Nkrumah. And like Brother Koko said, the book also, focuses a lot about, around, it focuses a lot on Patrice Lumumba, but, with the role basically that Dr. Nkrumah played in the ascension of Lumumba. So just wanted to add it there, because I'm sure that lots of people, because like I said myself, I didn't know, how important he was. And I remember in the first episode that we had, you focused on the fact that, every time that we're talking, you will bring Dr. Nkrumah. I was like, oh, okay. But just wanted to say that he's very important. And as Pan-Africanist, you need to understand his role, the role that he played in the movement, and, what makes him important, basically.
Fabulous. That to me helps a lot. Number one, it helps break the monotony of me just talking and talking to myself. Number two, it actually helps to focus the discussion. Because what did I say before we start? I said the education we got was meant to keep us where we are. One of those was actually hiding our true leaders. They wouldn't give us our true leaders. Why would they tell us about our true leaders? If they know that once we know who we are, we will actually take our freedom. If we knew our leaders, if we knew who our leaders are, who we are as a people, we wouldn't be living the state in which we live in. That's why they decided after Nkrumah was removed from power, nothing of Nkrumah will exist. Nothing. In high school, we learned a bit as part of history about OAU, how Dr. Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, Jomo Kenyatta played a critical part in the formation of the OAU and why OAU failed. But there was nothing on Nkrumah. We just know that Nkrumah was the first prime minister of Ghana, and then silence. It's part of the education. It's part of that strategy. That's why I said Dr. Nkrumah has written lots and lots of books. It's important for people to understand that. Then, the conference in 58 was not just for freeing Africa from colonial bondage. It was freedom now, unity tomorrow. That was the theme of that conference. So that says to you that they had in mind that the Pan-African agenda continues. It doesn't stop after African countries get their freedom from colonialism. So this is where Dr. Nkrumah came in. Very important, independent, very important. And he saw the role that was going to be played by Congo. They knew, Fanon knew that anyone who held Congo, who controlled Congo, controls the world. So that's how important it is. You have to realize that. And most Congolese either know this or they don't know it.
I mean, I think that most people don't really know how important Congo is. Because once again, I know that Congo has lots of minerals and all that. But reading that book, like you have, because, I think this is something that we need to say as well. Because the book, Dr. Susan Williams did lots of research. And she also brought a lot of quotation, from CIA agents and what they were saying about Africa and about, all the people that we're talking about today. And I remember when I was reading, I remember, Brother Koko reading that basically America basically saw Congo as, obviously, I mean, they knew about, all the riches that, the Congo held, but also they were very interested in the Katangan uranium, which according to them is like the purest and the highest uranium that you can find so far, like on Earth. And so for them, uh, when you were talking about Africa, it's as if they couldn't see any other country but the Congo. All like Nigeria, all of those, for them, those countries are nothing. Everything like Congo is the main focus because of, once again, the riches and also their minerals that we know today. We know that. So as Africans, we need to understand the importance of the Congo, because obviously all of the continent is important, but once we free the Congo, we'll be able to free the rest of the continent. That's just how I feel. Because, once again, they are like, their interest. We can see it today. They have managed to destabilize all of the continent, but the Congo, it's on the destabilization goes on another level. It's another level, like, killing and making sure that no one wants to go to the Congo. That basically, it explains why they're doing that. They are doing that so that, we basically as Africans and even other people don't even think about going to the Congo so that they can go there and serve themselves. So, Brother Koko, I just wanted to add that there as well, because I think that it's very important for us as Africans to know, our continent and why everyone, like all the Westerners, are looking, not just Westerners, the rest of the world. Why is the rest of the world looking at the Congo, especially? Everything, obviously, all our countries are rich but why the Congo specifically? So in that book, I understood why, the purity of the uranium and also, other riches. So you need to read the book to understand. But yeah, I just wanted to say that there.
Thank you, Queen. We talked about the conferences, about the political setting and everything else. I think what you're talking there is the economic side, which is, yes, crucial. Not just that. So the critical minerals, resources, make Congo the richest country on earth. By far, is the richest country on earth. But the way riches are defined is by who has plundered the most, who has sold the most, who has accumulated what. Hence, Congo is at the bottom of the pyramid when on those measures. But to be honest, Congo is the richest in the whole world. Not just the minerals, also the land, the fertile land, the plants in which Congo produces. The Congo Basin itself is a hub of life. And that's what also Dr. Nkrumah identified in his book, Africa Must Unite. He talks about the Congo Basin, what the Congo Basin can do for us. The Congo River itself, it can power it can produce hydropower electricity for the whole of Africa. The whole of Africa. If there was peace in Congo, and the Inga Dam, which is one of the largest in Congo, could be expanded, or there are other ways in which we can expand that, we wouldn't struggle to get electricity as Africans. We won't, but it's by design. So you talked about uranium here. So here are the parallels. Critical mineral resources. In the 1960s, Katanga was the jewel in the crown. Today's world, Eastern Congo is the jewel in the crown, because cobalt is being used for lots of things. Apple is being sued for extracting cobalt through illegal channels out of Congo and enslaving the Congolese in the process. So see that cobalt is in Eastern Congo, and Eastern Congo is destabilized. Uranium was in Katanga, Katanga was destabilized. Okay, so let's go back to 1960. And in 1960, Lumumba was jailed briefly as a post office manager because they say he had committed some fraudulent activity in which he had taken some money, of course, for what we hear, but with an intention to pay it back. But at that time, there were movements, there were protests for independence. They were going louder and louder and louder until the Belgians acceded that, okay, let's sit down and have discussions. So they went to Brussels for that. And most of the leaders were there, including Chombe and Kalonji and the others. At that time, Mobutu was working for the Belgian Secret Service. He was in the service of the Belgian Secret Service, even though he was a journalist. So I'm raising the name Mobutu now because Mobutu plays a big part here. All right. That is not that covered as much in this book as in many other books, including Michaela Rong's looking in Mr. Kett's footsteps. If you want to know about what Mobutu did to Congo, go read some of that, or go read how he stole the country. I think it's called Dictatorland. There's a book called Dictatorland as well. But I'm raising this as some people think Lumumba just picked Mobutu from somewhere else, or Mobutu turned a turncoat after he came into government with Lumumba. No, Mobutu was planted. He was planted in Lumumba's government. So Mobutu himself, there are like two polar opposites. Mobutu flunked school. He left school, went to enjoy life in Kinshasa when he was still in a missionary school, and the missionaries expelled him. And he went and joined the army. And then from the army, I think that's where he came into contact with Machiavelli's The Prince. He read that book and actually understood it. It was his favorite. So he saw himself as a prince. So even though he went to Belgium, being used by the Belgians, and then the CIA also got wind of him and started using him as well, he was also seeing himself in that picture. So Lumumba was released from prison also to go to Belgium for the negotiations for the round table round, which has been documented in many Congolese music. Table round. They went there, negotiated, got independence, but essentially, the constitution of the Congo, the first constitution of Congo, was the cut and paste of the Belgian constitution. So you can imagine, we were people before colonization, but after colonization, then we took their laws, we took their everything, we took their education, we took lots of stuff. Or should I say, they were imposed on us. And it's still the same now. Because at OAU, we decided to keep everything that Berlin Conference had carved out of Africa, including the laws. So after they got independence, or independence was agreed and said, Kabasele, Grand Kali, a singer wrote a beautiful song, Independence Cha-Cha-Cha. Is there in the book as well. The lyrics are there, and he captures, Sister Dr. Susan captures the euphoria which accompanied this argument and this independence being agreed for the Congo. It's a beautiful spirit. We all look forward to that. Everyone looks forward to that. Nothing can go wrong at this time. It's beautiful. But come Independence Day, well, there are elections first, and in these elections, no one wins outright. So I think Lumumba's MNC at that time, Movement National Congolais, was the lead party, was the biggest party at that time. So they managed to forge together a coalition. And in that coalition, Dr. Nkrumah advises Lumumba, okay, be a nation builder. Let this be a government of national unity. Extend your hand to Joseph Kasavubu and bring him into your government. One of the biggest mistakes. He brings Kasavubu as the president, though the prime minister has more powers at that time. The president is more of celebratory powers. Unlike now, where the president has more powers, the prime minister is still is a significant role within the Congolese government now. But you don't even know who the prime minister is now. It's more about Tshisekedi, the president, who has more power. And when the handover comes, Lumumba gives that speech, which it leaves the Belgian king smarting. Smarting. I think lots of people think he signed his death warrant at that time with that speech. Because, again, look, the Belgian king comes saying, again, we gave you independence. We gave you this. We civilized you. Behave yourself. Don't do anything. Stay within course. Stay within what we gave you, the parameters we gave you. And Lumumba gets up. He wasn't even on the list of people who were supposed to speak. But Kazongo, who was then leading, decided he has put Lumumba. They agreed that Lumumba should be there. And Lumumba came in and said, we were humiliated. We were embarrassed. We were starved. We were underpaid for the work which we were doing. Are you going to remove all the whips on our backs? We fought for this independence. We got it because we fought for it. It wasn't given to us. So let's not forget that. Let's not forget that. And they knew that this guy meant business. They knew he meant business at that time. And that's when I think the CIA and everyone else knew that, yeah, they had to do something. Because, as we said, the uranium in Congo was the one which was used to demolish Nagasaki and Hiroshima in Japan during the Second World War. And the Americans had got that from the Belgians when it was still Belgian Congo. So they, Americans, let's talk about American interests now.
Brother, just before we move on to the American interest, I just wanted to talk a little bit about Lumumba's speech because I only read it recently. I think it was like 2 months ago, and I remember finding myself in tears because like you said, when King Baudouin heard him saying that speech, he wasn't happy because Baudouin came and he was like, yes, we have to you guys have to be grateful for King Leopold II, Leopold the second, everything that he did for the Congo. He civilized the Congo and all of that. And Lumumba comes and basically he's like you said, he says, he basically says the reality of of everything that happened, all the killings, all the, racial treatment and all that. And when you read the speech, I don't know, you guys have to read it because in history, when we are learning about, American presidents and their people, basically the Western people, politicians, the greatest people of, of the West, we have to also read basically what they were saying, just for us to get a better understanding. So I feel like, us as well, we shouldn't limit ourselves to just read about Lumumba. Oh, okay, Lumumba was the prime minister of, the first prime minister of the Congo. I think, he left quite a few things behind. He wrote poetry. And once again, if you don't read, anything else, you have to read that speech because, like I said, it left me in tears because through the speech, you could see a man who really had a vision for Africa, not only for the Congo, but for Africa as a whole. A man who wanted to free basically the Congo and Africa with it. And obviously, we know how he ended. So, just when you read the speech, to see what he had in his heart, the agenda that he had for the Congo. And when we see what the Congo is today, it's quite heartbreaking. But once again, we still have to go through that, to really understand what our ancestors went through for us to find ourselves where we are today. So I just wanted to say, to say that because I feel like it's very important. And, those things like his speech, you can just Google it and you'll find it. But yeah. So please go and read that speech because it's very important to understand where we come from and where we are today, and therefore where we can go from here. So yes, brother, please take us through the American interests.
All right. So at the time that Lumumba came into power, it was the height of Cold War. And during that Cold War, they were fighting against communism. Again, another one word which is being bandied around as if you can fight one thing. So it was the fight against communism. And people like Lumumba, Nkrumah, they were seen as too close to the East, to the Soviet Union, who were seen as the worst of the West in terms of enemies. So that's that. Propaganda again is being used. And after communism, what came? Terrorism. After terrorism is something else. It will always be one word that they have to fight. An invisible enemy. Today, it's a fight against China. It's a fight against materials, resources, to get the materials out of Africa before the Chinese do. Because for some time, the Americans moved out of Africa or stayed as far back as possible when the Chinese were ramping up their operations. And the Chinese, let's not forget, they operate in a different way. They just come in for the resources. They don't interfere with your political strategy, political setups or anything. And the Chinese managed to get their hands in many, many resources in Africa. But now, the Americans are coming back. There is a Lobito corridor. Through the Lobito corridor, Trump had invested $4 billion of American money and $2 billion from partners to take critical resources from Congo to Lobito's port in Angola, and some of the copper or other materials from Zambia. So it's going to be a corridor because it involves those three countries, three very mineral-rich countries in Africa. Yeah, there's a Lobito corridor, a huge, huge project which is happening. It's a partnership between the US and the EU with Angola, DRC, and Zambia. We don't know what President Trump plans to do with that, but from what we have heard so far recently is that Trump called Tshisekedi and offered him support or security to deal with the issues that are happening in the Congo, but he has to sign off materials, critical control of some materials within Congo. We don't know what's happening. This is real time. We don't have all the information, but we are hearing that there's stuff happening. There's contact from the Trump administration with Tshisekedi. And if that happens, then we don't learn as Africans. We don't learn.
Sorry for cutting you, but from saying that, I believe with the weakness of Tshisekedi, I think I think that he will definitely do that, because it really breaks my heart to see that guy in power, because obviously he's been manipulated, but you can only be manipulated if you are not strong, if you don't have any values. So I believe that he will do it. Whatever they're asking him, I'm sure that he's going to do it.
That will be sad. That will be a dark day for Africa, not just Congo. So back to 1960 again, with the Cold War going on between Russia and America, the CIA was involved. And some of those officers who were involved on behalf of the CIA, they said, even if they had to go back and do it again, they'll still do it the same way because it was in the American interests. So as far as they are concerned, nothing else exists except American interests. Even killing Lumumba. So before Lumumba was killed, as I said, he was destabilized. And that happened when 5 weeks or 3 to 4 weeks after he got he was installed as a prime minister, the army revolted. Why did the army revolt? The army revolted because after getting self-determination, they expected that most of them will be officers. But let's not forget what the Belgians did, which again is in contrast with what the British were doing in Ghana. Lots of Ghanaians were educated at the time of independence. Lots and lots of them were educated. In fact, Nkrumah was fighting against this British educated cadre of Ghanaians because they wanted the process to be gradual, to be through and through, to be run through by the British. And Nkrumah, coming from the US, where he studied from the US and had already started seeing things from a different light, wanted independence now. That is the critical distinction between Nkrumah trained in the US and the British trained or officers, not just trained officers, but most of the other African leaders who were trained either in Britain or France or Belgium or all those other countries. He is different. He is trained from somewhere else. Then the Belgians in Congo left nothing of sort. There were few numbers of graduates, few number of high school graduates, and few numbers of commissioned officers in the army. So the then general of the army, he said, Belgian, he said, he drew a line on the board, a vertical line, and said, before independence, after independence. He said, no change. And the army, they were looking for opportunities. They were looking for an army that represents them as Congolese. So when he said that, the army revolted. And when that army revolted, then it was an excuse for the Belgians to mobilize their own army and come back into the Congo. Well, the Belgians, because the civil service was still full of Belgians, in short, everything was still Belgians, they panicked. There was panic everywhere when the army revolted. They thought their lives were in danger. Hence, the Belgians used that as an excuse to protect their own citizens. But where did they mobilize? They went to Katanga. They went to Katanga, not to protect their people in Leopoldville, but Katanga. Shingolobwe is the biggest mine at that time. It was the biggest mining complex at that time, which was owned by the Belgians. So they went to protect their own interests as well. But who are they working with? They are working with the US. Because during that time, Lumumba travels to Washington. And when he's there, he wants to arrange to meet Dwight Eisenhower. And the American secretaries of state who met him at that time asked him what he plans to do with the agreements which were signed during the Belgian Congo administration. And Lumumba says, well, this is a new dawn. We are a new government in power. Some of those arguments have to be reviewed, revisited. And that was the biggest mistake. Again, another nail in his coffin. Because they realized we cannot change this guy. And we want our interests protected in Congo. So it's one of those things that made them, that alienated him from the US. At the same time, they didn't allow him to meet Eisenhower at that time. In fact, they say Eisenhower called from a golf course where he was playing golf. You say, what did he say? He said that. They say, cut it. No visit for him with me. No audience for him with me. So again, Eisenhower is here. He's again the president of the whole world. Trump is there today. He's the president of the whole world. The prime minister here, Keir Starmer, has gone to America to pay homage. Macron was there yesterday to pay homage. Thursday, Starmer will be there. It's the same world order still happening as it was in the 60s. So when the Belgians mobilized, then there is a twist in the tale here, in that the Congolese, they look to the Americans. They think, we know America fought for independence from Britain. And we know that America supported Egypt when Britain and France invaded them after they nationalized the Suez Canal and told them off. So that's why that didn't go ahead, and Egypt managed to keep the Suez Canal, which was before a private entity. But the Egyptians nationalized that and made it a national interest. So the Congolese are looking into Americans and hoping these guys are going to support us, because they supported the Egyptians. They fought for their own freedom. They know what that looks like. The Americans will not have any of it. In fact, they pointed him to the UN and said, go to the UN. The UN will help you. And the UN had never had any mission like that before. It was the first of its kind. MONUSCO, the first one in Congo. And Nkrumah contributed to that mission. He contributed, he sent the army, he sent the civil servants. The Ghanaian civil servants were being sent, the doctors, nurses were sent to Congo from Ghana. That is how the Africa was looking after its own. Under Nkrumah, they were looking that this is going to be our new project. It's a Pan-African agenda. It's going to be another Pan-African state. The biggest mistake that Nkrumah does, he doesn't realize, is that the Ghana army itself also still had commissioned British generals in it. So there's a guy called General Alexander. He goes with the Ghanaian army to Congo to provide peace, to provide support, to provide stability. But when he goes there, the first thing he does, he calls Lumumba a communist. Yes, he calls Lumumba a communist. And it's not just him. Some of the senior Ghanaian officials are also being brainwashed to see Lumumba as a communist, siding with the Soviets. So the people who were going there to support Lumumba actually made Lumumba's life hell. And it was at that time that Lumumba was kept in house arrest. And then there was a dispute between Lumumba and Kasavubu. One was firing the other, saying, you are fired, or you are fired. So, again, we need to be aware that Lumumba never espoused communism in its form. What Lumumba said was, if you don't remove the Belgian forces from Congo within 72 hours, I will call the Soviet Union. He made that threat. Not that he intended to do it. 72 hours was too short, but he wanted action. He wanted the Belgian forces removed from Congo at the time.
Brother, you know what? I think it's exactly what you said there when you said that that general came and he accused Lumumba of being a communist. So I think you said that earlier, that communist was the trendy word, if you want. You know, if you want to diabolize someone, if you want someone to appear as the devil themselves, you can just say, oh, he's a communist, and that it was enough for the person to be, despised and to be hated by everyone. So I think the fact that they basically thought that Lumumba was communist, like you said, it was already his downfall. So yes, around that they could have built any narrative, and people would have followed with that. So just the fact that he mentioned Soviet, the word Soviet Union came out of his mouth, it was like the proof basically for them. You see, we told you, he is with them. So yeah, but I believe that, even if he didn't talk about the Soviet Union, or even if he wasn't really a communist, they could have still, I mean, we don't know what was happening, but maybe he had some affinities with, with the Soviet Union. And if so, because that's the problem with the US as well, with the Western, side of the world in general, because they want their enemies to be your enemies, because they don't get along. They are in that Cold War with the Soviet Union. They wanted, everybody, every country basically to go along with them. If you are not with them, you are against them. So that's the problem. They have they can have their partners, and they can have their affinities with other countries, but because at the time the Congo was still it was a young nation that just got its independence, and it was vulnerable, and they used that against Lumumba, unfortunately.
And what you just said there is what was happening with Ukraine. If you were not supporting them against Russia in Ukraine, then you were not for them. It's exactly the same thing. It's repeating itself again. But with the new information being available nowadays, we have seen people sort of waking up from the sleep in which they have been induced. Because before that, what the media was saying was enough. But now you can go on the internet and find the information for yourself. You can look at stuff. Things have changed. Things have changed. But what Dr. Nkrumah said was, we do not look left or right. In fact, we look forward. We look forward. We do not lean left or right. We look forward as Africans. That's why they were in the non-aligned movement, and which South Africa and the others continue to be in the non-aligned movement up until now. They still do not want to take sides. That's why South Africa, you see them being warm towards Russia, even when everybody else was excluding Russia. And now the Americans, today, was it yesterday, they voted with the Russians in the United States Security Council, where vote was on to say, do we condemn Russia at the third anniversary of invasion of Ukraine? But today, Donald Trump's United States has voted with Russia for the first time ever. So as far as I said, there is no permanent enemy or a friend of the Americans, only interests.
Yeah. I think that's a reality that we are going to see more and more, especially under Donald Trump, who is a businessman, as we know. In business, it's interest first. So basically, we saw, how Biden, the government of Biden was with Zelensky, and the moment Trump came, basically he analyzed the situation, and he saw that, they had more interest to be on the side of Russia than to be against Russia. Because like he said, they don't want another war, they don't want a conflict against Russia, basically. So yeah, I believe that we'll see that more and more, that business minded, that mindset of Trump is, will be coming over and over again. But once again, let's not forget, even if it's like that, we still know that the strategy is going to be the same, and that strategy involves Africa, wherever, which whichever president they will elect in the US, still they will have interest in Africa. So I think we need to keep our eyes open still.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the Americans, initially, what they were doing before independence in the Congo, they were supporting, giving money to all leaders because they wanted something out of all of them. And that's what this book also says, is that the CIA, they will give something, but when they will take and never end. It never ends with them. They don't stop taking. So what they did, they created what was called the Binza Four. And that Binza Four, Kasavubu was there, Mobutu was there, I think Kalonji was also part of that, as well as the chair of the National Assembly at the time. And these are the guys who, in the end, Mobutu was forced to take action against Lumumba because he had been given the money. He didn't have a choice. And let's not forget how Mobutu comes in. When the Belgians created a problem with the Armée Nationale Congolaise, the ANC, the army, Lumumba didn't have anyone. He didn't have commission officers to take over, and he puts Mobutu there. And another guy as a general. Mobutu is the chief of staff. And his vice president at the time, Antoine Kisanga, one very smart guy, he was worried about that. In fact, they removed Mobutu when Mobutu was out of town from that role because they didn't trust this guy. They could see he was a snake. But when he came back, he went and cried to Lumumba and said, they have removed me. What has happened? He cried the tears, and Lumumba felt sorry for him and reinstated him. Again, another nail in his coffin, because that's the same man who removed Lumumba from power. So this is a story, and is long, interwoven with all of the other stuff that they are doing. And to cut it short, they are also involved in Angola. They are involved in Angola. They are funding the Angolan civil war. And the guy who was there in Angola went to Ghana and to try to talk to Dr. Nkrumah and the others to favor him, but he said, make peace with MPLA at the time. Make peace with MPLA. It didn't work for him, but in the end, we see Savimbi coming up. Savimbi was then supported, and this time through Mobutu. Okay? But long story short, there is a lot that happens in this book, and it's a step-by-step to show what happened from when Lumumba was removed from power, when he was under house arrest, and when he was chased because he escaped from house arrest at some point, until he was arrested, and then he was taken to Katanga. Let's not forget again, we are seeing Congo nearly disintegrating because the eastern side is occupied now. At that time, Chombe had taken off Katanga. Chombe had taken off Katanga. After Lumumba's death, there was another civil war in the Congo. And Kalonji wanted Kasai. He was a self-styled king of Kasai, Kalonji. He wanted power for himself. Chombe, the minute Lumumba, they sent him to Katanga, they knew they were sending him to this death because Chombe hated him like sin. That's how bad things were between them at that time. So there is another thing which I would like to add on. We talked about how communism was used as a euphemism, the one word which everybody could rally around it. They used that with the African Americans. They used our African American brothers against us because they wanted to rally them to their call and make them the good guys and make anyone else who supports the Soviet Union or who seems to be closer, who cozy up with the Soviet Union as a betrayer. So some of the African American brothers don't really realize just how much they were involved in derailing the Pan-African agenda, which is their own. It's their own as well. Because a strong Africa is also strong Africans everywhere around the world. But they were used. For instance, NWACP, which is the movement in which W. Du Bois was part of, they were forced to sack him from the movement for funding from the CIA. And Du Bois is also labeled as one of the communists at the time because they don't like him, clearly. Then they used musicians. They used musicians to sort of win over the Africans to the American culture, to say, okay, look, we are like you, or we do stuff which you should be for us. You should be with us. They bring Louis Armstrong for the tour of Ghana, Senegal, and the Congo. And at that time is when Lumumba was removed from power, in short. And there was let's say the Americans, the mood or the public opinion towards the Americans was at its lowest. But once they bring in Louis Armstrong there, he sings, he serenades them, they forget about that. And Louis Armstrong doesn't realize that his tour has been paid for by the CIA. And that's when the CIA also take that opportunity then to make their own statements. Right? And other people who don't realize just how much that they were used as destroyers is the first president of Congo, I think Yulu. He's the one who they go and get the plane from to chase Lumumba while Lumumba was on the run. So really, again, Kisenga plays a big part here. Antoine Kisenga, who was Lumumba's number 2, the deputy prime minister, did a lot, and he seems to read the room much better than Lumumba. And let's not forget here, Lumumba is about 35, 36. When he's captured, there are 3 of them. I think he's the oldest by far, I think 36 or 37, and then there's a 36 one, and then a 35. So Joseph Mpolo, Maurice, Joseph Okito, and Maurice Mpolo. Let's not forget, it's not only Lumumba who dies there. There are 3 of them, him and his 2 ministers, Maurice Mpolo and Joseph Okito. They are sent to Katanga and are killed at that time. And during that time, let's not forget, Dr. Nkrumah supported Lumumba all the way, even sending some ministers, top-level ministers at the time, to see him when he was in custody and to send him messages and to also get messages out from Lumumba between them. So yeah, you have seen what Dr. Nkrumah was doing. Dr. Nkrumah played a huge role in liberating Africa, and unfortunately, the Ghanaians then don't realize what Dr. Nkrumah is doing. There is a propaganda against Dr. Nkrumah himself, which in the end leads to him being overthrown by the help of the CIA. And then the CIA turn around and say he was losing popularity with the people. He lost popularity with the Ghanaians. They toppled him. Don't blame the CIA. But the CIA is involved in the death of the 2. And there's also another officer who is involved in both deaths. Involved in Congo is Kotoko. Kotoko is the one who the airport is named after in Accra, Ghana. Kotoko International Airport in Accra. He's involved with the toppling of Lumumba, killing of Lumumba, as well as Dr. Nkrumah. So yeah, the book ends there where the Americans accede. They accept that Dr. Nkrumah was the man who was he was the strongest fighter, strongest opponent. He fought against our American interests. The biggest threat for American interests on the African continent. Right? So in the end, Dr. Nkrumah died while he was in Guinea. Fanon also died. Momi was also killed. Momi was killed either by the French Secret Service or the Cameroonian people at the time. And Fanon died because he died of cancer. And George Padmore, who was from the Caribbean, came in and worked with Dr. Nkrumah and was instrumental in building of Ghana. He also died of cancer. And there were questions regarding his death. So once you start to look at the death of George Padmore, how he died, and then you visit Fanon, you look at Dr. Nkrumah, you start to question. You start to question. But these are they're not covered in the book per se, but that of George Padmore is. And another African American who was fighting for civil rights, liberties, as well as the African, self-determination was Paul Robeson, the singer. And he was also labeled as a communist sympathizer. And he was also somehow attacked, from what we know. And just to summarize again, the people who they were fighting against, Nkrumah and Lumumba, these people, they were at heart Africans. They were for the African people. And if you remember the African people are collective. They're more collectivist in doing things, communalist. So we should not confuse communalism with communism. Communalism, it says, I am because we all are as people. So even Lumumba espoused the version of is Ubuntu. He espoused Ubuntu and understood what Ubuntu is. And in their language in Congo is Bumuntu. That's what Lumumba was for, not the communist. It's just for the people. But the way he was sold out to the Americans through the propaganda, they hated him from the onset. They just didn't like him because he knew he could see, he had a vision for Congo, he had a vision for Africa. And they could see he could make Congo stronger. And once Congo was stronger, it wouldn't be easy to exploit it. And there are people here who are exploiting the Congo, giving rise to what Dr. Nkrumah in the end called neo-colonialism. So he wrote that book in 1965. And in 1966, they toppled him because they hated that book with, I don't know, I can't even find the right word to say how they hated it. The CIA hated the book, neo-colonialism. But we live under neo-colonialism as Africans. But most of Africans do not think neo-colonialism is a problem. That's why they went to OAU and the Monrovia coup. Monrovia, because they convened in Monrovia under the leadership of who? Liberians. Who are Liberians? Who are? Yes. Yes. So that's that. It's a huge book. I've just tried to to touch on the most important, but I think let's stop here if possible. Then we'll see if we can do another session in which I can find my slides and we can talk about that. But for now, let's just not forget, weaker Congo is Congo that cannot be exploited. American interests are constant. There is no permanent friend or foe for America. Only interests. Those two key things are important in us understanding what's happening in this book. And let's not forget the role played by Dr. Nkrumah in all of this. And Pan-African agenda has not stopped, has not finished. It hasn't reached its conclusion. It was freedom now, unity later. Unity hasn't come still. and the wheels came off in the Congo.
Oh, you know what, Brother Coco, this was amazing, to be honest with you, because I know how thick the book is. So I didn't even think that we'll manage to go through the book like that, to basically to talk about the main themes within the book until the end. And you did it amazingly. So thank you very much. And I just wanted to say, something really quickly here regarding the CIA, because when we hear about the CIA, it's very difficult for us to understand really the role that they play. But when you read that book, when you go through the book, you see incredible things. It's like it's as if it was a movie. But unfortunately, those are things that happened and keep happening till this day. Basically, the CIA is everywhere. Within the book, you could see them everywhere, influencing, creating, bringing trouble. Basically, they were everywhere. And I believe that today it is still the same thing. We see those puppets that are there because within the book, I remember, one of the Americans that Susan Williams quoted. I don't remember the name, but basically they said that what they wanted is a Western-oriented governments in place, basically in the Congo. Western-oriented government, basically a government that will be there not for the interest of Congolese or Africans in general, but for the interest of the West. And that's exactly what we are seeing today. So they managed basically to get rid of Lumumba and then to go and get rid of the root of Pan-Africanism. That was Dr. Nkrumah. And that was enough basically to keep Africa, in neo-colonialism, the way he said it. So, that's, it's very important for us to remember that, whatever we see, whatever narrative they are presenting to us, things are never, as they seem. There's always more to the story. There are always players behind the curtain that we don't see. So we need to basically develop, some, a critical thinking, basically, to not just accept whatever they're showing to us, but to try and analyze and compare to the past. Let's use, our history as a compass to understand the present. Because, once again, the way we were doing, like, the way Brother Coco was doing here, analyzing the book, and then we're trying to draw parallels to show you that actually what happened back then is still happened to this day. So I think like you said, it's a very, very big book. So we managed to bring, the main ideas. And I will finish with what I remember, what Dr. Nkrumah was doing. Basically, he was a very, very well-read man. Like he will read anything that he can find, basically. And he will try to push people around him to read as well, because it's only by doing that that you will get to see things from a new light, to understand new perspective, etc. So as Africans, we also needs to follow his example and read different books, different perspectives, for us to understand the world and see the world through different ways of thinking, basically, instead of just being in our bubble and just trying to view things according to our own opinion. I think we need to read. That's the bottom line. We need to read and not stop reading. And when we started the podcast, Brother Coco here talked about his groups, his courses that he has to push that, that interest, that passion for reading. Because, I remember I was, when I was doing my master's degree, I read something that was saying, basically, I'm not quoting, but I remember it was along these lines. If you want to hide something, to black people, just put it in a book, just write it. Just, basically it means black people don't read. So we need to change that. We need to change that. So once again, Brother Koko, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for, first of all, I didn't know about this book, and you were the one who was like, haven't you read White Malice? I was like, no. And you said, you have to read it. So thank you, because I definitely needs to finish it and then go back and read it again. That's how powerful this book is. So thank you, brother, for coming, and thank you once again for taking us through this very powerful book.
Asante sana.
Men and women of the Congo, victorious independence fighters, I salute you in the name of the Congolese government. I ask all of you, my friends, who tirelessly fought in our ranks, to mark this June 30th, 1960, as an illustrious date that will be ever engraved in your hearts. A date whose meaning you will proudly explain to your children, so that they in turn might relate to their grandchildren and great-grandchildren the glorious history of our struggle for freedom. Although this independence of the Congo is being proclaimed today by agreement with Belgium, an amicable country, with which we are on equal terms, no Congolese will ever forget that independence was won in struggle. A persevering and inspired struggle carried on from day to day. A struggle in which we were undaunted by privation or suffering and stinted neither strength nor blood. It was filled with tears, fire, and blood. We are deeply proud of our struggle because it was just and noble and indispensable in putting an end to the humiliating bondage forced upon us. That was our lot for the 80 years of colonial rule, and our wounds are too fresh and much too painful to be forgotten. We have experienced forced labor in exchange for pay that did not allow us to satisfy our hunger, to clothe ourselves, to have decent lodgings, or to bring up our children as dearly loved ones. Morning, noon, and night, we were subjected to jeers, insults, and blows because we were Negroes. Who will ever forget that the black was addressed as tu, not because he was a friend, but because the polite vous was reserved for the white man? We have seen our lands seized in the name of ostensibly just laws, which gave recognition only to the right of might. We have not forgotten that the law was never the same for the white and the black, that it was lenient to the ones, and cruel and inhuman to the others. We have experienced the atrocious sufferings, being persecuted for political convictions and religious beliefs, and exiled from our native land. Our lot was worse than death itself. We have not forgotten that in the cities the mansions were for the whites and the tumble-down huts for the blacks, that a black was not admitted to the cinemas, restaurants, and shops set aside for Europeans, that a black traveled in the holds under the feet of the whites in their luxury cabins. Who will ever forget the shootings which killed so many of our brothers, or the cells into which were mercilessly thrown those who no longer wished to submit to the regime of injustice, oppression, and exploitation used by the colonialists as a tool of their domination? All that, my brothers, brought us untold suffering. But we, who were elected by the votes of your representatives of the people, to guide our native land, we, who have suffered in body and soul from the colonial oppression, we tell you that henceforth all that is finished with. The Republic of the Congo has been proclaimed, and our beloved country's future is now in the hands of its own people. Brothers, let us commence together a new struggle, a sublime struggle that will lead our country to peace, prosperity, and greatness. Together we shall establish social justice and ensure for every man a fair remuneration for his labor. We shall show the world what the black man can do when working in liberty, and we shall make the Congo the pride of Africa. We shall see to it that the lands of our native country truly benefit its children. We shall revise all the old laws and make them into new ones that will be just and noble. We shall stop the persecution of free thought. We shall see to it that all citizens enjoy to the fullest extent the basic freedoms provided for by the Declaration of Human Rights. We shall eradicate all discrimination, whatever its origin, and we shall ensure for everyone a station in life befitting his human dignity and worthy of his labor and his loyalty to the country. We shall institute in the country a peace resting not on guns and bayonets but on concord and goodwill. And in all this, my dear compatriots, we can rely not only on our own enormous forces and immense wealth, but also on the assistance of the numerous foreign states, whose cooperation we shall accept when it is not aimed at imposing upon us an alien policy, but is given in a spirit of friendship. Even Belgium, which has finally learned the lesson of history and need no longer try to oppose our independence, is prepared to give us its aid and friendship. For that end, an agreement has just been signed between our two equal and independent countries. I am sure that this cooperation will benefit both countries. For our part, we shall, while remaining vigilant, try to observe the engagements we have freely made. Thus, both in the internal and the external spheres, the new Congo being created by my government will be rich, free, and prosperous. But to attain our goal without delay, I ask all of you, legislators and citizens of the Congo, to give us all the help you can. I ask you all to sink your tribal quarrels. They weaken us and may cause us to be despised abroad. I ask you all not to shrink from any sacrifice for the sake of ensuring the success of our grand undertaking. Finally, I ask you unconditionally to respect the life and property of fellow citizens and foreigners who have settled in our country. If the conduct of these foreigners leaves much to be desired, our justice will promptly expel them from the territory of the Republic. If, on the contrary, their conduct is good, they must be left in peace, for they too are working for our country's prosperity. The Congo's independence is a decisive step towards the liberation of the whole African continent. Our government, a government of national and popular unity, will serve its country. I call on all Congolese citizens, men, women, and children, to set themselves resolutely to the task of creating a national economy and ensuring our economic independence. Eternal glory to the fighters for national liberation. Long live independence and African unity. Long live the independent and sovereign Congo.